Hi, and welcome back to the Awaken Your Wise Woman podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Cush, and I'm excited to be here. I'm otherwise known as Biz, depending on how you know me. And I am grateful that you're here, whether you're a first time listener or a long time listener. Welcome or welcome back. And this season, we are focusing on highly sensitive women, and most of our guests will be highly sensitive. And we're going to be talking about our stories and sharing a little bit about, they will be sharing a little bit about themselves. So I thought it appropriate today that I would share a little bit about myself and my sensitive journey. It seemed important that based on our last two guests, Martina Williams and Phoenix Gould, that we did a lot of talking about our parts that are parts that get activated by our sensitivities, but also parts that get exiled and wounded from other people and experiences when we were children. And so I just thought I'd share a little bit about some of my parts and how they show up today versus in my childhood, although often they stem from my childhood, my parts. So I took a vacation a couple of weeks ago with my children and some of their partners and friends and my husband. And I was really looking forward to it. It was a week at a almost beachfront home. We were right on the beach block and the weather was perfect. And I was so excited to just have time away from work to relax, enjoy the time with my children, but really time on the beach reading and eating good food and hanging out. About halfway through the vacation, I realized I wasn't sleeping well. I was feeling super anxious. I had a stiff neck. So, like, this side of my neck was the right side of my neck was so sore. And each day I woke up from sleep with this oh, intense headache and just stiffness throughout my whole neck. And that lasted about 3 or 4 days into the vacation. And it was a light bulb moment. I was like, okay, this is vacation, and I feel really stressed out. That there's a part of me that is just on overdrive and waking me up at night, planning for the next day, wanting to be sure everybody was having a good time. Um, and I feel like really, I was noticing that my feelings of overwhelm were just building and building. But the reality was, we were at the beach. We were in a beautiful rental home. All of my kids were there. The weather was could not have been more perfect. So the reality was, I didn't really have a whole lot to be stressed about. So it really brought home um, how my parts can jump into place, like just turn on without me even being fully aware that they're kind of taking over and what we call being blended. Like they were in charge, and it was my manager part and my people pleasing part. My people pleasing part, the part that really wanted to make sure everybody was happy, to make sure everyone's agendas were being met. And often that meant that there was not no space left for me. I was running to get groceries. I was making sandwiches, and I love doing all that stuff. I love taking care of my family. And there are ways to do it while taking care of myself too. And that part, the people pleasing part, often bumps my needs right out of the way, kind of invalidates why I need to take care of myself. And so I had to kind of reset. I had to realign myself. I had to take a moment to really reflect and spend time with myself to recognize that I could take care of my kids, my husband, their friends, their partners, and take care of me too. There was room for both. And so for me, what does that mean? It means taking time alone. It means saying no if there are things I don't really want to do, or saying, well, I kind of wanted to do this first and then I can do what you want to do. Um, but it also means really taking care of myself, resting, making sure that I'm not so stressed so that I can sleep and feel refreshed the next day. And it's funny how it's so easy for those parts to jump in when there's a lot going on and when it's easy to fall back into old patterns and old ways of being because of who I'm with or the situation. Because if I'm not paying attention, if I just keep chugging along, the irritation builds, the overwhelm builds. I start getting snappy. I start getting, yeah, where I just want to go away. I just don't want to be around people. And the resentment builds. And I'm curious for those of you listening, whether that sounds familiar, whether those people pleasing parts sometimes just take over and want to be the the driver, want to be the person in charge, and that those people pleasing parts don't leave a lot of room for pleasing ourselves, for turning that inward, to turn it towards ourselves, the taking care of ourselves. Hmm. Yeah. So I realized that all the things I didn't want to feel on vacation was what I was feeling. And that was a real realization that really hit home. And fortunately, we had enough time left. Our vacation was like 10 or 12 days. I'm forgetting exactly. And so there was time to reset. There was time to do things differently. Thank goodness. Because the rest of the vacation, I felt so present, so aligned with myself, and able to have fun and relax and enjoy myself. When I was able to acknowledge my feelings and I really held some appreciation for those parts that jump in because they really want especially my people pleasing part, they don't want conflict. They don't want stress for others. This part wants everyone else to be happy so that I can relax. So I appreciate that that part knows how to make that happen. And I recognize that it's not really healthy for me right now. No, it's no longer helpful for me right now to jump into that full on people pleasing mode. It ends up hurting me and not necessarily helping everybody else. And those old patterns stem from old wounds in childhood that in my head as a kid, I thought that if everybody else was happy, if my parents, my siblings, if everybody else was happy, if I could just do all the right things, then my life would be better. It would be easier for me. I'd feel less overwhelmed. And that was probably true as a kid. If I was in the people pleasing mode, probably there was less stress. But that's not something I need to push so hard on or push so hard to make happen today, that I am not that little kid anymore. And I've raised three incredibly competent and sensitive young men who can take care of themselves, and whether they're happy or not, or whether they're in conflict or not. When I reconnected with my parts, I was able to slow down. I asked for help. I reconnected with my family. I took a couple bike rides. I took some beautiful long walks on the beach. And I just took time and moments to reflect and recharge. And I think as a sensitive woman, that is one of the most important things that we can do for ourselves. Give ourselves permission to recharge, to reset, to get back to ourselves. If this sounds familiar to you, I would love to know how you rebalance, how you um, get back in touch with yourself and what you need. If you find yourself getting into people pleaser mode or manager mode where you're just doing, yeah, how do you find ways to reconnect with yourself, with your needs, and how you reset and recharge? Mm. And that's often the work I do with my clients, really helping them recognize those moments, getting into the habit of really paying attention to when you're in overdrive in any of your parts, when you're feeling really blended, when you're feeling as if the part has sort of taken over the show. And a lot of the work we do is finding space, finding our way back to ourselves so that we can reset and resettle and feel more aligned and in touch with ourselves. Well, I hope that this little sharing of a story was helpful for you. I know that when my sensitive parts want attention, it's important for me to listen. And I hope you're listening too. Well, if you haven't had a chance to listen to my conversations with Martina or with Phoenix Gould, Martina Williams or Phoenix Gould, they're both beautiful conversations around parts work and healing and learning to trust our intuition through self compassion and self kindness and self love. And I hope you'll check those out. And there will be more amazing conversations with other sensitive women to come. So I hope you continue to stay tuned. If you want to, you can subscribe to the podcast through Apple Podcasts and follow it on Spotify or wherever you listen. And I'd love your feedback. Well, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. I hope that you take care of yourself and your parts. I look forward to connecting with you right here again on the podcast.